And we're back. Welcome to Recovery in the Middle Ages, the podcast about two middle-aged suburban dads and their pursuit of life, love, and recovery. I'm Nat.
And I'm Reverend Mike.
Today on Recovery in the Middle Ages, we dive into Annie Grace's definitive work, This Naked Mind. Mike cuts his finger and has to get stitches, and Dr. Carl Hart writes a book advocating for recreational heroin use. All coming hard in your ear holes right now.
Right now.
Welcome back. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts. Great reviews will be read on the air.
Yes,
I put
as we get them.
I put a question mark there, but it should have been an exclamation point. And welcome back, everybody. Great show for you.
Hey, let's hope so. It's Friday.
Yeah, it is Friday, and
hope it's Friday where you live.
We've all had an interesting week.
Tell me about it.
Visit us on middleagesrecovery.com.
Yep.
Tell us your story. We're not getting a lot of those.
None, in fact. Well, have we gotten one or two?
There's some bot that keeps filling it out, and they just write like one word.
Oh.
It's weird. They must be testing something.
That doesn't count, though, does it?
No, it does not.
For anything?
It is
no.
not. But we have gotten some good reviews. I haven't gotten permission to read them yet from the...
Thank you, people, for writing the good ones.
The listeners. But some very exciting stuff is happening. Still working on merch. And yes, Jeff, I know I have to drop ship you stuff that we want to print on.
Well, we can talk to Jeff about that.
You don't think I should
in another forum?
I shouldn't directly. I shouldn't track this for our show.
No,
right, we'll save it.
Oh, by the way, any of you who want a shirt?
Yeah, it's a T-shirt.
Go to the Facebook page.
Yeah,
right? And you posted something.
I did. I know it's confusing because I haven't posted a price. I haven't posted it's pretty. I haven't actually put a way for you to order it. Here's the reason. I just really wanted to get a kind of a show of hands who even wants one at all.
Well, so far it's two people: Jeff Shredwards and the other guy, Jed Shredwards.
He's also Jed's our Dopey Dharma Buddhist recovery guy.
Cool. Yeah, we have to have him on.
Yeah, definitely. And I brought it up with him sort of, on a post or something, the way people communicate these days. Mm-hmm. And he seems interested. And he also listens to the show. So, Jed, what's up?
It's a new year. We need guests because you don't want to listen to us just talk all year endlessly.
Or do
inane chatter, as my wife calls it.
It's big on the inane chatter. We're also on Twitter. The incomparable Erin Moore is our super twat? Is that
she? Does she? Oh, you're gonna.
I'm gonna hear it from. That's not what I meant.
Are you going to? Do we post tweets or are they just bot tweets?
I think our Podbean.
You know what? Why run down Twitter? Go to Twitter and subscribe and see what's going on.
See what happens. See if anybody writes you back.
Somebody tell me.
But lots of exciting stuff. It's a new year.
It is.
It's getting cold. Are you getting cold? Are your Christmas lights still up?
Mine?
Yes.
My Christmas lights were gone 2 days after Christmas.
Yeah.
I can't. I just can't. It's too depressing.
Yeah.
The tree. I have a funny story about the tree. The real live tree that I didn't want to get this year. So I leave it in the living room, and that actually like a week or two after Christmas, I was sort of like, hey, should we take down that tree that you wanted to get to my wife? And yeah. So finally me and Ben take it down, and I drag it out of the house and I throw it in the backyard, and there's needles everywhere all over the house, and the two of us spend like however long cleaning it up. And then I look in the back and I notice that my tree from last year is still leaning against the fence. So I'm like, how can I, get rid of this tree? So I just dragged it out to the front of the curb and left it. And so it's this brown, shriveled tree.
It's like a Charlie Brown
all
tree.
These other like green dead trees up down the block. I wonder what the garbage thought. And I really wonder what they thought when 2 days later I dragged out the other one.
Wait, what is it?
So, whatever.
So you're taking it down. What we do in our house, because, I'm supposed to do it. It happens in stages over time. Mm-hmm. So first thing to go in our house is the tree, the real tree. always a real treat, and for us. Right. And then my wife got a chance to take down some decorations inside, and then finally I'm the one that's got to pull the lights down from the outside, and it's just been too cold. And
just put on a heavy jacket. You live in the Northeast.
I've been working so much, even though nobody's coming in.
No.
But
that's what the weekend's for, Matt.
That's it. But I like the cold weather mostly because it's the only time I can wear this Blade Runner 2049 like movie. It's from the movie Wardrobe Design. It's like one of these companies that does like movie style clothing, and I'm a huge Blade Runner fan. So the jacket that Ryan Gosling wears in it. In any case, I got that a few years ago for myself. It's leather. It is a trench coat, and it's designed like super awesome cyberpunk.
So while you're tracking down replicants, you can also remove your Christmas tree lights.
Yeah. Yes.
Very good.
And I not only did I also bought the prop version of the gun, like somebody made on Etsy.
Buddy, I wouldn't be wandering around the neighborhood with that in your hand, especially after the last couple of weeks.
I'll show it to you after the store. It's in the store. But that's another story. So I'm just looking for excuses to wear my overcoat, but I haven't gotten one yet. And not only that,
it's cold.
I wanted to ask you, we've got a lot to talk about today, folks. So sit back.
It's a fully packed schedule.
Yeah, relax, everybody. Chill out.
I can't.
And
you don't mean me.
Listen to the sweet sound. No, you don't chill out. You get crazy.
You know what I realized? I've totally lost control over what these buttons all do.
Yeah, we used to have a pretty predictable sound bank.
My CPU is enrolled at 5.
Okay, that's Arnold. Okay, that's that.
You know.
My advice to you is to start drinking heavy.
Okay, that's that. Oh, good. I have that one back. And that one. Okay.
What's the top two?
Sorry.
What are those buttons?
The top two is, I think this is...
Oh, I didn't know you had a claptrap.
Laughter. And then there's the recovering the news and the other one.
Okay, cool.
We'll get to that later.
What I wanted to ask you is, how are your New Year's resolutions going?
To the extent that I've made any, they're doing fine. I will say this, as a person who was previously known in my work incarnation as somebody that really appreciates a bottle of wine, let's say,
right.
I've been getting wine shipped to my house this season, like there's no tomorrow. I think
Who
last
sends
year,
you wine?
Lawyers, people that I give work to, it's that kind of thing.
The holiday stuff.
And they're always very good bottles of wine because, you don't want to send a shitty bottle of wine to somebody. So the other day I got one. It was some Cabernet, something. Sauvignon. And I opened it up because I was making bigos, which is like a Polish hunter stew.
Bigos.
So I needed to saute something in. And I realized some people are like, you can't cook with wine if you're an alcoholic because it'll make you want to drink, which I think is a bunch of horse shit, but whatever. So I'm cooking with the wine and I leave the bottle out on the counter. And this morning I go to pick it up and, dump it. And I notice it's like 3/4 empty. And I'm like, well, I didn't drink it. And I said to Aaron, I'm like,
why is Nat?
Yeah, unless right,
What's that doing
unless I'm sleepwalking and drinking at the same time. But it turns out since according to my son, I have the house wired up like the CIA surveillance state. I have cameras in the kitchen. I
really
caught a look at my 16-year-old son helping himself to a little of that nice Cabernet last night. So when he first started having some issues with smoking pot and drinking a little, we came down pretty heavy and it had exactly the opposite effect, right? He just got dug in and decided he was going to say fuck you and do it more. So what I did this morning was I took a picture on the Vivino app, which is an app that you can take a picture of a label on a bottle of wine and it will pull up the cost and all the information about the wine.
That's cool.
So I took a picture of the label and I sent it to him. I texted it to him and I said, in case you wanted to know more about what you were drinking last night, and then I laid out reasons why he shouldn't have been drinking the wine.
Like $1,000 bottle of wine.
No, it was like $50, which is,
it's a good bottle.
Yeah, I wouldn't spend that. I never spent that money on my own wine. Yeah. If someone's buying it for me, fine. But so I don't know. I think he got the message. He didn't say anything to me. But
what's curious about your son is that, from what I've heard, I don't even think I've had a conversation with him. But
most people have not. He doesn't talk much.
But I was going to say, what's interesting is you said he's recently gotten into like the conservative political.
Yes, very much so.
And that we're not making this about politics, I promise. But it's just an interesting aside is that you were having some trouble with him smoking pot and kind of generally misbehaving and not participating in school and things like that.
Correct.
And then miraculously, over the last, I don't know, month or two, he's completely
since September,
changed.
really, yeah.
He is latching on to the conservative mindset, or I don't know if he's gone full conspiracy QAnon or
no, not QAnon.
He's not that far.
No, he's smarter than that.
So
sorry, guy, if anybody believes in QAnon who's listening.
Yes, again, and so and then now he's sort of doing better at everyday stuff.
Yeah,
he's driving you mad with this new issue. But it's like, isn't that like harm reduction? Like, I'd rather him put his energy towards that, even though it's this situation. Crazy
I would much rather debate him about politics than yell at him about smoking pot. Right. And I don't even think he stopped smoking pot, but I think he's somehow compartmentalized or managed to prioritize the things that are important over the things that are not. And I don't know. He's a work in progress. We'll see how it all falls out. But I helped him buy a couple of stocks yesterday. He wants to invest in the stock market. So yeah, I'm pleased with the direction he's going. And last night's little jaunt down Cabernet land notwithstanding,
it's funny because I feel like I had those exact same scenarios roll out in my marriage, where it was towards the beginning of when she was kind of like, okay, it's time to like cut down on drinking like a little bit, like before it got nutty. And then stuff like that happened all the time. Like she would take like something, it was this confrontation, and I was basically, that perpetual adolescent, trying to get away with something.
Yeah. I mean, I let him know he's not getting away with anything.
But he's 16 or 7.
Right.
16. So it's completely, understandable.
Yeah.
And it's a good sign. I don't know how I would feel about it. I know that I think, like you said, I'd rather be having, and if it's great, if there is a positive fallout to, a mindset like that, there's nothing wrong with it, I don't think, except that he's going to be voting in a couple of years and that scares you. But guess
voting
what?
in the midterms.
It's New York. I don't know. It's a funny thing, but I understand you guys were looking at Catholic schools for
different kid.
Oh, for Jack?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know why I thought Dimitri, because Dimitri's almost out of high school. Right. So Jack.
Yeah,
right.
I had him take the Catholic school admissions test.
Yeah,
which
what's the thinking there? Why do you want him in a Catholic school?
They're better schools.
Which
the one?
Oh yeah,
I don't want to say the name, but the one that he got into that's the top of his list of 3.
Yeah,
because you have to pick 3. Yeah, is the one that I went to, and it's a very good school. And the only problem is I've raised
that rhyme
him
with lemonade?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. The only problem is I've not raised him much with religion. So
yeah. So that is going to be tricky. So then,
it's especially tricky because I have to submit a baptismal certificate for him by the 27th of January, and I don't have one.
That's amazing.
And so I had to basically debase myself in front of a priest yesterday.
You wouldn't be the first.
Right. And say, listen, can you help me out here, Father? Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. It's been 45 years since my last confession, but I needed to. So I don't know. That's also a work in progress.
Did you tell him you did a podcast with a Protestant?
No, because if I tell him I did a podcast and he listens to this, he's never going to grant me the plenary indulgence or whatever the hell I need.
Plenary indulgence? That sounds interesting.
I actually got a plenary indulgence.
What is a plenary indulgence? We'll cover that in a different show. So
very quickly,
yes,
it is you are absolved from all punishment from sin, assuming you do a couple of things. Like in the year 2000, there was a jubilee, and if you made a pilgrimage to Rome, which I actually did in the year 2000,
you did,
and then went to confession, which I did at the Vatican.
Really? How did that
then
go?
I got everything that came before then. I was off scot-free.
Wow.
Yeah, good stuff.
I want that.
Yeah.
The difference between something like that, like the Protestant equivalent, is just believing in Jesus and asking him to forgive you.
Which should be enough.
He did it. Yeah. I mean, he is God and everything.
I mean, the whole Catholic church hierarchy is like middle management. There's really no need for it, but anyway,
God love him. God love him. So that's interesting. So are you going to get him back? Like,
I'm waiting to hear back from the priest who actually sent me an email.
Yeah.
Yesterday, after I emailed him, which having been raised as a Catholic, it's to get an email like this from a priest. You get that clenching feeling in your stomach when he goes. What did he say? He said, "Hello, Mike." Oh fuck. He goes, "Perhaps we can figure it out, but the idea is that you want to be a Catholic and not just use us in the sacrament to get into a school." So I think I have my work cut out for me when I speak to the priest. But he also said perhaps there's a way. So.
Okay. Well, that's extremely interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting.
It reminds me of when I married a Catholic girl. Now, I was Protestant, but I wasn't just a Protestant. I mean, my family's pretty active in the local Presbyterian church. I'm a deacon there. I'm way more involved in religious activities, let's say, than my wife was at the times. So we had to sort of make a compromise because her mother is very, Catholic.
Right.
And she was just, very insistent that her daughter be married in a Catholic church. And so the deal I cut with my wife, I said, listen, fine. I said, I'll do that. I said, but the Pope can't have my children. I think those are my exact words.
What does that mean?
It means I'm not raising my children.
Okay.
I said, Pope can't have. Okay. I said, can't have my children. I said that to my mother-in-law, and that was a classic moment. But I made it very clear that, listen, I can't raise the children Catholic because I don't know I'm not Catholic.
Right.
And then they made a whole thing. It's the mother's, religion that the child is. And I was like, no, that's not true. My mother was Jewish when I was at that age. She hadn't converted yet. And it was the parent who just feels more like it's more important to them.
Right.
Like that's the way we did it.
Right.
And so it was more important to my wife's mother that we get married in the Catholic Church. So she got that. I said, fine, I'll do it.
Okay.
And more important to me that
horse trading the sacraments for
So I had these funny awkward moments because they make you go to pre-Cana.
Right.
And did you go to pre-Cana?
No, I was not married in the church.
Oh, okay. It's basically a class. So you're basically having a priest who wouldn't call them relationship experts for a variety of reasons, giving you advice. And not only that, they give you technical advice on sex. And like
what do you mean? Like
how, when you should do it and why you should do it. And, how wonderful it is.
Nothing on how? Positions?
They didn't describe, we didn't get out the Kama Sutra, in Latin or something. But, so it's this class and you have to go through it and then graduate from it for the Catholic Church to marry it. And so I went through it and it was pretty funny. One of the stories we always talk about is there was one church that we went to one of the church services each Sunday, or what was it, Saturday? Catholics do it different days. They do
Sunday or Saturday.
They really like Saturday Mass. So we were at one of those, and we get there, the class had to attend. The priest was like, "Oh, hey, I'm glad you got here early. Can you bring up the gifts?" Which, do you know what gifts are?
I do indeed.
What are the gifts? Could you, for our audience?
Yes.
Not everybody knows what the gifts are.
The gifts are the water and the wine that the priest is going to turn into the blood of Jesus.
What about the crackers?
The wafer is the Eucharist, the communion, the body of Christ.
Right. So those are considered the gifts.
The gifts.
So me not using the word gifts in that way ever in my life I looked at my wife and I said, I'm so sorry, Father. Well, we didn't bring any gifts. I didn't know we had to bring gifts.
That's good.
And he was looking at me, but I was dead. I wasn't even joking. And my wife's like, no. She should take it. And then I went and I just grabbed the whole wafer, apparently.
I don't think you're supposed to touch it.
No, you're not. But I grabbed it anyway. And she was like, no. And so that was just part of the fun that I had. You
guys don't have rules like that in the Protestant tradition? You must have different rules.
No, everything, it's different, and it's a lot more prosaic, and it's a lot more not as smells and bellsy. It's more like
that's the part I like about.
Well, yeah, a lot of people like that.
Yeah.
I mean, some people remain in the Catholic religion and just for those cultural things, like every Wednesday before Easter, you go and Ash Wednesday, all of that stuff. Whereas Protestants are well, at least in my belief system, we're really just more concerned with a direct relationship with God. And the priest or the pastor has no special power or connection to God. Not only that, the president or the person who runs the Presbyterian Church, and this is true of most Protestant denominations, is just like runs a corporation. He's not considered special.
He's just
you have as much, like a person sitting in a pew has as much power to talk to God and be forgiven as a priest does.
Right.
And so,
well, that all stem from Martin Luther nailing the stuff to the door there.
The 98 Theses or the 99 Theses.
Right, and that was because of the selling of plenary indulgences, just to bring back full circle to the plenary indulgence.
And my understanding of the plenary indulgences or the indulgences is the Catholic Church was letting people pay money to be absolved of things or to have
that's
a better favor.
Also simony, I think, is that what it's called? Yeah.
I mean,
is anybody still listening, do you think?
To this show? No.
Yeah, because we're a little in the weeds,
I'm very sorry. Anyway.
We should do another show on comparative religion.
Yeah.
Not like this show, like a whole other show.
Like a limited mini-series or something like that.
Right.
So moving on. I'm not going to talk about, I have a bullet here about college, but you cut your finger. I think we really should talk about you going to urgent care. What was that, last week?
Yeah, it was like 5 days ago.
Yeah, you were whittling some kind of homage to me.
You know how things show up in your Facebook feed, like endlessly ads?
Yes.
Like somehow or other I must have indicated an interest in buying a very sharp knife, because for weeks all I would get is ads for this Japanese knife company. And eventually I was like, fine. And I ordered it. And it came, and they were very sharp knives. And I'm like, okay. And so within the first week, I cut off like the tip of a fingernail and cut, myself. And finally last week, the knife got the better of me and did a nice deep cut in my index finger. And the blood was spurting out all over the place. I had to like grab it and run over to urgent care and get a bunch of stitches and have it put back together.
Yikes.
So it was weird going. I haven't really been to the doctor that much since COVID started, and sitting in there with all those people waiting for COVID tests I had one N95 mask left that I found in the closet, strapped that sucker on and went in there. The doctor's hands were shaking when he was sewing me up, and I could not figure out what that was all about. Like, he seemed like a nice enough guy, but I don't know, maybe he's got like a problem of some sort. I don't know.
Bad guy to be. So, but you're feeling
no painkillers. The thing didn't even hurt,
Yeah, when it's sharp like that.
Yeah. The thing I will say though is when I popped open that bottle of wine the other day, as long as I'm in a confessing mood, since we're talking a lot about Catholicism, for a brief second it occurred to me to just pour it into my mouth, and I honestly have not thought that for a long time, because my wife drinks wine around the house.
Yeah, me too.
But this was like, it was more than a thought. It was like,
And so what did you do with it?
I played it forward and realized, why would I want to throw away everything that you and I have, Nat, here in the storeroom over one fleeting moment of pleasure?
Well, I want you to know that even if you relapsed, nothing really would change here. We would just it'd be good for the show.
Make for good radio.
In fact, we're actually scheduling a relapse for one of us in the near future. We'll see. Just in case if listenership starts to drop, one of us will have a relapse.
Well, we did get that. Was it a review or you got an email or a message from somebody who said that they found my foray into temporary dementia from my CBD experience to be amusing?
Yes,
to them? I'm glad that my suffering was able to amuse.
Yeah,
people.
Jamie wrote us from the Dopey Nation. I know her from the Dopey Nation, and wrote us a really funny review. And I'm just waiting to get her permission on that to read it, but it's very funny. Yeah. And then finally, in housekeeping here, because we need to move on to Annie Grace, you went back to Crack Street.
Oh, shit.
And that's not an actual street.
This has
Crack
been
Street.
A fucked up week for me.
Yeah.
When you think about it. Yeah. So wife and I were bored last Sunday. I guess it was Sunday. And I was like, let's go drive over to Inwood, which is a neighborhood in Upper Manhattan that I used to live in that has a nice park overlooking the Hudson River. And I figured we could get out, walk around. But my wife was like, well, okay, as long as we're going, why don't we just drive through some Bronx neighborhoods? And I'm like, okay, I got a couple of Bronx neighborhoods we could drive through. So we get off at Fordham Road, I make that right turn onto Decatur Avenue, which is where I used to get into all my trouble.
Right.
And drove up the block, and I started freaking out, man. I started sweating. I started feeling really, because we're driving in the car, and I'm pointing out, oh, hey, honey, that's Freddie's crack house over there. I spent most of the summer in that guy's basement, and there's the store that I helped hold up, and there's the, and I'm going through all this stuff, and she's like looking at me with like a look of horror on her face.
Doesn't she listen to the show?
She does, but I haven't really been so, descriptive with a lot of the tales of the dark jury past,
Interesting.
But anyway, the odd thing was that neighborhood hadn't changed much at all.
Wow. No gentrification.
No gentrification in that part of the Bronx. And, Erin was like, she's like, it's so dirty. And I'm like, yeah, it is. It's dirty. It's poor. It's desperate. And it's full of drugs. That hadn't changed at all.
Wow.
But my reaction was, it was almost akin to like a mini panic attack. But because I definitely had some PTSD from all those nights spent running around up there, getting into all kinds of trouble. And, I had a job where I had to drive around the Bronx. That happened after I quit the crack. And so I kind of worked through a lot of that during that job, because I had to go to those same neighborhoods in a professional capacity rather than a recreational capacity. Mm-hmm. But I really haven't been on that street since, 1990, maybe.
Wow.
91.
Yeah, that takes you back.
Yeah,
that PTSD stuff. I think I talked about this last week. I'm in the last few months of my sobriety, more and more out of like nowhere, just all of a sudden I'm reliving these memories, just like when I flipped my car. I'll have that memory of when I opened my eyes and I was hanging upside down.
Right.
And just going back to that, like more of that's been happening, where stuff that I haven't thought about, like my entire 20s, I haven't really thought about, you know what I mean? But now it's starting to come back, like, one night where I got too drunk at a bar we used to hang out at and my band used to play at, but I went by myself, and like I was driving back in the snow, and I crashed into a snowbank. There was no cars on. It was like 3 a.m. I was coming back, and I was just drunk, man, and I like crunched my car up like an accordion, and they still drove it back, parked it in the driveway, came home, went to sleep, and this was before I got sober, like, because I was still allowed to drink,
right?
In my wife, my house rules. So, and then the next morning, when we woke up, she went out to go to work. I think it was saw the car, and it was just. What the, she let me have it. And I'm like, oh, and it's just those moments. And there's so many moments like that.
Yeah.
So dealing with that, I think is the next stage in my recovery, And it's something I haven't dealt with really, because I hadn't been sober long enough to, I was still so focused on like running out of the burning house immediately.
Yeah.
Now doing the post-mortem on who started the fire, why did they start it,
right?
Where did it start?
Right.
Like, what was the most flammable thing in your house? Obviously, that was all a metaphor.
Obviously,
there was,
but it is interesting that because I put that stuff behind me so quickly in the 90s, like the drugs, that I blocked it out. I didn't want to think about it.
Yeah.
I didn't want to think about the type of person I was when I was doing it. And so, but the past never stays in the past. It comes up and knocks on the door every once in a while to re-announce itself and say, hey, you have some unfinished business up here on Crack Street, or,
Yeah. And, if you listen to some of the quantum physics theorists and stuff right now, the past, the present, the future,
it's all the same.
It all is, not only is it the same, it's all happening simultaneously.
We're all manifesting time.
Every moment that has ever was is happening right now.
That's right. That's the Zen Buddhists believe that also.
And with that, we'd like to move on now to Annie Grace's This Naked Mind.
Yeah.
No, wrong. Oh, jeez. Wait, which one are we doing for?
No, not that one.
Not that one.
There we go.
Hey, Andy Grace. We talk about this book a lot. We've been bringing it up a lot in the show. If you've been listening since the beginning.
And if you haven't, shame on you.
Yeah, shame on you. And so finally, we're going to give this the RMA treatment. So I was re-listening. I've listened to this book a couple of times. And I started doing it again just to do this show. And I just love this book. I mean, like, what did this book do for you?
This book was really the way that I got sober.
Really?
Actually.
This naked mind process.
What it did was it completely changed I mean, it's similar to smart recovery in a way, because what it does is it teaches you to completely rewire your brain to think about alcohol very differently, not as something that, you need to have, that it relaxes you and all the other positives that you associate with why you drink, or you can only be social if you drink. And it teaches you that all of those things that you believe, all of those beliefs that you have about alcohol and using alcohol and what it does for you are actually not true.
Right.
And it switches. You flip the script around until you see alcohol as the lying, conniving, poison that it is.
Right.
So, why would you want to put that into your body? Right. Exactly.
And she calls this liminal thinking, which she gets from, I forget the author's name, Gray, I think David Gray, maybe. And basically what that is changing your subconscious through conscious actions and thoughts.
Yes.
So it's the belief that alcoholism is, and I'm going to simplify this, but it's not that simple, but is that the reason people keep drinking alcohol or even start to begin with is a subconscious plant, like an implant from media, from society that has built up around alcohol. You've been seeing it since you're a little kid, described only in positive terms. So liminal thinking is to learn something or to read or study something that is true to destroy your subconscious misperceptions.
Right. Because the subconscious is where the decisions to drink come from, and because of the beliefs that have been internalized over the course of your life up to now.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, you have a line here called blind men molesting an elephant. So I'll let you talk about that. I don't recall that from the book.
Wrong text. No. Yeah, so she describes it, and I think this is, she describes this at the beginning of the book, about how perception isn't necessarily reality.
Right.
And this idea and confirmation bias, like, so the blind men molesting, I didn't have to write molesting, but
you just wanted to.
I did, and after the coming in your ear holes, I was just kind of going down that path.
We're earning that explicit label this week.
Yes, explicit. And so if three blind men walked up to an elephant, and not a joke, ooh la la, remember?
Right.
If you say ooh la la after anything, it makes it creepy.
Yeah.
So one blind man walks up to the elephant, grabs the trunk, and
grabs the trunk, does he? Okay.
She keeps grabbing the trunk over and over again, massaging it, and so
that blind man has one perspective on the elephant, right?
It's a snake.
Right. Okay.
Another one puts his hand up against it and says it's a wall. And then the third one, grabs the tail or something and says it's, I don't know what it is, something else. But they're all wrong. But they're all sure of what they think that they have perceived. And then so Annie Grace uses that to sort of explain this theory that, like, everything we've been seeing is just these partial realities that have been manipulated to make us believe something. Like, on a very basic level, it's like, I'm stressed out. What's the first thing I think is going to help me? Having a drink. And everything you've seen on television, you've seen socially, tells you that this is the thing to do. So,
and it all reinforces itself. That's the weird thing. Like all of a sudden, mommy wine culture is a thing.
Yeah.
And it's all over social media. And so it's become an acceptable way of dealing with stress.
Right.
I'm not judging people, by the way. I'm just using that as an example because there's beer relaxation culture around sports for men, right? And all of a sudden beer is somehow associated with healthy physical activity.
Right. I'm
How
always
the hell
amazed.
does that happen, right?
You know.
Let's sit around and watch people in the peak of their physical prime perform tricky sporting things, and we'll sit on the couch and eat Doritos and drink ourselves shit face.
I'm just going to get wasted while I watch you exercise.
Right. Right. So, I mean, these assumptions run deep, and I wouldn't say Annie has a problem with AA. I think she thinks that some of the assumptions underpinning some of the thought processes in AA are incorrect. Like the fact that AA considers alcohol to be some kind of an allergy, right? But it's not an allergy. It's really, it's a question of how you are thinking about alcohol. That's the issue.
Right. I mean, that's what she's saying. It's not an allergy. I mean, that's no science and medicine has not definitively determined alcoholism to be an allergy or a disease. That hasn't happened. The only thing that has happened like that is in studying the brains of people who are already, suffering from addiction are clearly different from the way that they're different from someone who isn't.
But that didn't pre-exist the alcohol drinking. Therein
lies the problem. And I think I'm a living example that, I'm not really, paralyzingly bipolar. Like, I'm not, but it was really exacerbated, made worse, and became a diagnosis by more than one doctor.
Right.
And although I no longer suffer, I mean, bipolar isn't something that you can catch.
No.
And so that's the only, proven, like, okay, there's a physiological change in alcoholics.
Right.
So she's against that.
Well, but she also says that, there's a problem with labeling people as alcoholics because alcohol as a substance is dangerous. It's addictive. But we persist in labeling a subset of drinkers as alcoholics. And because that reassures ourselves that, we meaning the quote normal drinkers are different from those people because they have a disease.
Right.
When in reality, there's millions of regular drinkers who go through their lives with no fear that they will become an alcoholic, while it's almost inevitable that social drinking progresses towards some level of alcohol abuse.
Right. And all the while ignoring the fact that if they are stressed out and don't have a drink, that they are incapable of calming down and feeling better without that.
Right.
And that is the definition of addiction, I think, in some perspective.
Well, all studies that have been done on regular drinkers show that they tend to increase their consumption regularly over time.
Right.
You start with one on the weekend, and then it's one every night. I mean,
that was the path I took, but I was later, informed that that's just because I'm an alcoholic that happened. Not, and that there's something wrong with me. Annie also compares it to like cigarettes in that she says we don't go around calling someone a nicotineaholic or a caffeineaholic or a caffeineaholic with coffee. They say you should cut back or stop, because it's an addictive substance.
Yes.
You didn't have a pre-existing thing wrong with you that made you smoke. It was the smoking that created the problem in your physiology.
Yes. But however, we take that disease model and we apply it to alcohol and we apply it to drugs.
Yeah.
Like some drugs, only the ones that are not socially acceptable. Those are the ones that people can be labeled alcoholics and addicts over. But the ones that are okay, it's the substance. It's not the...
Right. And so she's, pointing out that not only is there a double standard, but that it's basically completely misleading. And not only that, but the people who are perpetuating the myth are doing it basically to sell more alcohol or make money somehow from it. But the ground swell of people who are supporting alcohol is so vast, and it's been going on so long that it just barely has to be pushed along to keep going.
Yeah.
There's always going to be beer commercials on football games. So it's a matter of changing the way you're perceiving it. She's saying she's seeing it the right way, and you're seeing it the wrong way, and here's why.
Right. Well, she starts off the book with one of my favorite quotes about alcohol ever, which is, it's the only drug that you have to justify not using to other people. And I know I've said that before, but that thing always, the minute I heard her say that, the first time I read that book, it was like a light bulb went on over my head.
Say it one more time.
Alcohol is the only drug that you have to justify not using to other people, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you were doing cocaine, people would not be like, well, why aren't you doing more cocaine?
Yeah, hey,
we're going out. You're not doing cocaine. What's wrong with you?
You ready to do a shot?
Like, do you have a cocaine problem? Is that why you're not doing cocaine? It's like, it's ridiculous, But alcohol, it's like you have to explain why you're not drinking, why you're not going out to the bar, why you're not doing. And I agree with this idea that there's a big alcohol that's, incentivizing everybody drinking, but I don't think that's all of it. I think it's a collective shared hypnosis almost about this substance. I mean, what percentage of the population do you think actually drinks?
I think like 80% of adults, probably something like that. She gives a number.
87%.
Wow.
So that's a hell of a collective unconscious set of decisions that are being made. But it's also fair to assume that the majority of people who drink consider themselves in control of their drinking, right?
But definitely.
Really, everybody who drinks has a chance of becoming addicted. Right? You
Absolutely.
can't know when you're in control of your drinking and when it gets away from you, which is what makes it so dangerous.
Right, and she also talks about the rock bottom thing and how it's like the only problem where people things have to get so, like, you keep doing it so much and it's so bad, and that your hypnosis is so strong that it takes a rock bottom event to disabuse you of the notion that this is actually bad for you.
Yes.
And then she talks about how when she tells people she quit drinking, they automatically assume like, oh, that must have been so hard for you. You must have been in such a bad place.
Right.
That, like, what was so horrible going on that you would quit drinking? Like, wow, something must have gone horribly. And a lot of the times that's what does happen. And that's why that's been perpetuated. But she's saying, like, what the hell?
But that's a dangerous thing to have as a common belief, because that makes people who are not skipping along the bottom or hitting their bottoms think that they don't have a problem.
Right. And how about my sponsor or AA guy who would tell me, you're not done drinking yet. Get out of here. Go out and finish drinking. You're not ready for this. Have you ever heard people say that?
I've heard that happens.
You're not done drinking.
I'm horrified by the fact that happens.
If you question the process too much, that's what they'll say. In fact, I had a professional therapist. She was a social worker. I think she had an MSW. She wasn't a doctor, but she was an AA person who was in therapy. There's a few of them, I think. And that was one thing that she said. I came back one week and I had relapsed, and I was like, I can't stop doing, because this is way early on, before I got into and so she basically told me, and like angry, like yelling, like, get out, like, you're not done drinking, go drink. And I was like, that's when I fired her, honestly.
Yeah.
I was like, that's absurd. Like, what are you talking about? So, there's some very strong opinions.
Alternatively, though, under like this naked mind, like they say that, or she says that, you don't need to stop drinking to start engaging with the process of not drinking.
That's very interesting.
That you shouldn't drink while you're reading the book, right? But if you are drinking, at some level, then, it's okay, as long as, because she kind of reels you in with this, because the title of the book, it's very sort of markety. She was a marketing person, and it's like how to control your drinking, right? When actually the goal at the end day is to really, her tagline is, you can drink as much as you want after participating in this program. The secret being, of course, that you won't want to drink anything after finishing the program, right? But I don't know. She has some helpful analogies, like the pitcher plant analogy, which is, when you start drinking. She likens the progression of drinking alcohol to like a bee. If you know the pitcher plant is like a carnivorous plant.
Oh, like the Venus flytrap.
Yeah, except, if you're like a fly and you come across a pitcher plant, you kind of sit on the top and it tastes like there's really good nectar down there. And so you start going down the flower tube and sampling the nectar, and it's really good and you're enjoying yourself, but you figure you can just turn around and leave whenever you want. But out of the corner of your eye, you look at the bottom and you see there's a whole bunch of other dead flies down there, which she equates to like the dead bees at the bottom of the pitcher plant are sort of the equivalent of the guy who's drinking out of a bag under a bridge, right?
Right, or
like,
all the people whose lives you've known that are ruined.
You're a social drinker, and you see these guys, and you never stop to think, like, did this guy was he always like this, or how did he start? Because by the time you realize you're sliding down the pitcher plant, if you're a bug, it's too late to get out, right?
Yeah, and that reminds me, as a kid in the summers, when we were playing in the backyard, if there were bumblebees or those bees, we put out. My parents had Bartles and James, which is hilarious. Thinking back, Bartles and James was like wine coolers, and my dad would leave a wine cooler open, and then the bees would go in and drink it and never come out. Just the same thing, but they keep coming.
She had a lot. She has a lot of like little moments of epiphanies for me in this book. Like one sentence she says is like, how many people do you know who drink consistently less over time? And I'm like, none.
Yeah. I mean, the only people I know like that are people like my parents who just were never drinkers at all.
Never started in the first place.
So in their 70s, they definitely have decreased.
I mean, alcohol chemically is a poison, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so why consume any amount of poison?
Well, and he talks about the cognitive dissonance, which is a term that I love. In other words, you're doing something and you can't stop doing it that is not helping you or you don't want to do. Other addicts have referred to this as using against my own will, which is a good point, because when they're trying to make the point about, my will gets me drunk, which is why you give your will over to the program, give it over to God. But
if you reframe it as not a willpower issue, that it's because if you're struggling to give up something that you think is doing something for you, your willpower is not going to be enough. But if you change the way you think about that particular thing to the point where you don't want it anymore, then then you're not using your willpower.
Right, right, and that's kind of how I feel, and I think looking at it from where I'm standing now, as opposed to where I was looking at stuff like this 3-4 years ago, is that I know that on the other side, basically, what it's like. I can basically, my inner addict, I think I talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I have the inner addict that normally would, like with you drinking the wine, you hear him going, just down it, just take it, and more often than not now, my inner addict is an inner recovered addict. Thankfully.
Exactly, right?
And he advocates for me for once, finally. And that came with a lot of me actually finally fully understanding and accepting that it wasn't a positive thing that I was being deprived of. And that I think is super important. Like, I don't walk around going, I wish, why can't I drink like my wife or my friends or normal people? It's not something I want, because I don't really think deep down inside that really it's some kind of pleasure that's been denied me.
No, exactly. And that is the whole point of this naked mind, is to internalize and accept the belief that this is not something you want, because it does nothing for you except create horror and pain.
Yeah, and when I first listened to it, I was not agreeing. I didn't think this would work. When she writes out at the beginning where she says, like, just change your thinking and change, your body. She starts off by talking about her an experience she had with pain and pain management.
Right.
I don't remember exactly, but she was saying that it was basically that emotions can cause physical pain.
Yes, she had a back issue that she healed by dealing with the emotional thing.
Right. So she talks a lot about that, and it seems like woo-woo, but the longer you go, without, self-medicating your pains and things like that, your body, and you get happier. And with that positive thinking, with that being healthier, a lot of those pains, according to her, are, that you think, or there's something, physically, are actually emotional pain.
Yeah, there's a famous doctor. He actually cured Howard Stern's back pain. That's the guy that she was talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you write down the name of the?
I didn't.
Okay, for the next show we'll talk about that. But that was a very important point. So this naked mind, I mean, it's in the title. She's really just kind of trying to let us all know that you have a lot more power than you think, and that this kind of dogma that we get from recovery that there's something wrong with you. You're different, that she's saying, no. What's going on here is alcohol is the same. You know what I mean? It's a poison. It's addictive. And at any level, it does nothing but cause sickness, pain, and heartbreak.
Right.
And any notion you have to the contrary has been basically brainwashed into you.
She's not only saying it's physically addictive, but psychologically addictive because of those other things. Because that's important, because she's not so reductionist as to say that alcohol is chemically addictive, which it is. But
she doesn't say that?
I don't think she does, because
okay,
if you look at some of the work that Gabor Mate did on addiction, or some of the studies he cited, the biological component to addiction, this substance can cause you to become addicted, is not as strong by itself as it is when it's combined with other issues.
But she doesn't deny that it's an addictive poison.
No.
Right.
No.
But that's not the main push. Yeah, because anytime your body would naturally tell you to not do it, you've got all of this psychological claptrap going on, convincing you that it is good and there's something wrong with you.
I mean, there's 60 types of diseases associated with alcohol. It causes twice the number of deaths as all other drugs combined. 2 million Americans suffer from alcohol-related liver disease. And yet, right?
And it's still considered a refreshing,
you can just
cold brew.
Walk into the liquor store and buy whatever you want.
Glass, beads of condensation dripping down,
beads,
golden, carbonation rising majestically to a beautiful foam head settling just above the edge of the glass.
You're going to send half the listeners out to the deli now. So what are you doing?
Get the deli to get a sandwich. Yeah, but that's that's what they're doing. Those sexy commercials, sexy people drinking sexy drinks, and at the end of the day, it's a money grab and it's bad for you.
I realized, over the summer, that if I put my kombucha in a fancy glass and stuck a piece of fruit in it, it was more or less the same.
That's what I totally agree, man. I love my Mexican Coca-Cola. And I put it in a Chimay glass. Chimay was,
there you go.
It used to be my favorite small batch, craft beer. Made by these Trappist monks, but and it comes with a cool glass. But putting the ice in it, and I'm just as I got to tell you, I'm not even exaggerating, guys. And those of you who are still using and drinking think I'm nuts, because I would have thought you were nuts too. But I'm telling you, I get this same satisfaction. I really do. At the end of the day, when I drink, even if it's water, what I find is if the thing I've put in my mind, and this is actually a perfect way to get this together for me, is that when you are, what was I just saying? I completely lost it.
What do you mean?
Damn it.
Chimay, the glass.
Okay. What I was going to say is that when the thing in my mind matches up with the thing I'm about to do, like when my mind automatically tells me, can't wait to get that glass of Coca-Cola,
right?
And I think about it in the same way I would fantasize about a drink, just not fantasize, but thinking about it. So when I finally do put the ice in the glass, crack open that Coca-Cola, put the water, it's just like in the movie theater when they over amplify the sound of the ice coming in, and they're
the bubbles
filling up with the fizz.
Yeah.
So now I get that same kind of serotonin. Well, not exactly the same, because there's not a chemical spike,
right?
Although sugar, but in any case, it's another show. But I get that same sense of relief that I may have got,
right.
When I would for the past hour, maybe thinking about I'm going to go home
because you rewired yourself,
right? So I believe it now because I almost inadvertently did it just by reading this Naked Mind, discussing it with you, reading other books, having other discussions. But ultimately, I think what I've been doing all of these years to try and get better has been bolstering that inner my subconscious too, and maybe that's what I ultimately needed. And I don't know, maybe if I had known that like 10 years ago,
right,
this wouldn't happen, but then I wouldn't have had the journey and I wouldn't have met all these great people.
Right. That's all
and all these
in
cool.
the past. Although if it's all happening at the same time, maybe it's still the present. I don't know. Anyway,
so let's wrap up this week's part. That'll be part 1 of Annie Grace. Unless there's anything this week you want to say more about Annie Grace.
No, I think we've given Annie her due. Other than the fact that on January 28th, I'm appearing on her podcast.
And that is the coolest part about this show is we're announcing that. I think we've already said this, but
I don't know when it's going.
Mike's going to be on.
I'll be interviewed on the 28th. So
really exciting! It's a very large show. She has a very large audience, and we are very. I just said very many 2 times. Yeah. It's very exciting for us. I'm very excited for Mike. So stay tuned for that. And that brings us to Recovery in the News. Yeah.
Okay, Recovery in the News this week. I bring you an article from the old gray lady herself, the New York Times, which is a review of a nonfiction book by a fellow named Carl Hart.
Dr. Carl Hart.
Dr. Carl Hart. And the book is called Drug Use for Grown-Ups, Chasing Liberty in the Land of Fear.
Before you go on,
yes,
I think we should, in case the audience doesn't know, this guy has been very, I don't want to say popular, or I've seen him in documentaries. He's been very outspoken in general about addiction. He comes from a background of like the inner cities. He's from an African American neighborhood that was, financially downtrodden. The area was crime ridden, and he rose above it all. He becomes the doctor of chemical science or something. I forgot to look. He's a scientific doctor.
I used to buy acid from a guy named Dr. Nat or something.
Did you really?
Yeah. But yes, so, I'm not impugning the guy's credentials.
That's why this is so amazing, is he's been such an advocate for addiction. And
well, he has a theory, right? His addiction theory is that it's not... Funny, we were just talking about this. Is that the substance itself is not what makes you addicted, because he did a study with rats, and he offered them companionship or cocaine, and the rats took companionship or something.
Right.
You remember?
Yes, because unless they were forced to take some, in which case then they couldn't stop taking.
Yes. So the opposite of addiction is connection.
Yeah.
That's his shtick, which is true.
Different guy is the connection thing.
Yeah.
That was that British guy from the TED Talks that says the opposite of addiction is connection.
Is that Monte?
No. Different guy.
Anyway, so fast forward for a couple of years, and Dr. Hart has been engaged in different hobbies, I guess. He in the prologue of this book, he writes, "I am now entering my 5th year as a regular heroin user."
So that's a bombshell right there, just because he's been this recovery advocate, but he has been advocating for harm reduction a lot. So this kind of follows his logical path.
But he also says in this interview for this review that he knows about the discomfort his readers may feel when they encounter his full-throated endorsement of opiates for recreational use. He offers the information in a spirit of radical transparency because he believes that if grown-ups like him would talk freely about the role of drugs in their lives, we wouldn't be in the mess we are in, a mess brought about by our ruinous drug policies, no disagreement there, which have such profound and profoundly unequal consequences for those who run afoul of them. Okay, I'm all on board for the abolition of the drug war.
Right.
I don't know how I feel about a book that sort of lauds recreational opiate use.
So anybody else, and this is...
I'm sorry. You are an opiate user.
Yes.
Is there such a thing as recreational opiate use? Or recreational crack use, I guess?
like my instinct is to say absolutely not. But had this book come from anyone else, I would not be humoring this at all, because obviously I think that's absurd. But this guy is very credible. He's been out there in addiction and harm reduction, and so I'm willing to kind of hear him out.
Okay, here's what he says.
Yes, please.
Quote, I discovered that the predominant effects produced by the drugs discussed in this book are positive. It doesn't matter whether the drug in question was cannabis, cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, or psilocybin. The positive effects that he cites include greater empathy, altruism, gratitude, and a sense of purpose. For Hart personally, coming home and smoking heroin at the end of the day helps him to, quote, suspend the perpetual preparation for battle that goes on in my head.
Yeah.
Now, I think that's a bunch of bullshit. Well, I think it sounds to me like rationalization and justification.
And that's what a lot of us in recovery, I think, are. And
using a platform as a voice in this space to advocate the use of methamphetamine, crack, and heroin is the height of irresponsibility, I think.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. The only reason I'm not jumping up and down, screaming for, him to be canceled, cancel culture, is because of his background and credentials. It is about the only thing keeping me listening to him. Having said that, I don't, like, on its face, I don't agree. I would have to read this guy's book,
I guess,
look at all of his angles, but on its face, and if you're like me and you've met and interacted with thousands of addicts in the past 10 years,
yes,
studied it and so forth and so on, you hear that and you immediately think of 100 other addicts who have said very similar things. The only difference being he's in a position where people will respect his opinion because of his academic, history and his work history.
I mean, when I think of methamphetamine, I always think about empathy, altruism, gratitude, and sense of purpose.
Yeah, when you're disassembling the air
definitely a sense of purpose.
Yeah. When you're disassembling your neighbor's air conditioner and
looking for the bug in
4 hours, and this empathy. It sounds to me like he's rationalizing his drug use.
I got a chuckle out of the thing that he says. He expresses frustration with members of the psychedelic community for insisting that their plant medicines are a superior class of drug and for not coming to the defense of drugs with more tainted reputations like PCP. I mean, maybe this is just the New York Times painting this book in a way that they want to, because that's what they do sometimes.
That's news,
but I don't know. I don't think I want to read it.
I think I'm going to. When I say read, of course, everybody knows I don't actually know how to read. I listen to it. I will listen to it.
Either way, I'm loath to give this guy any money, though, so he can go buy some more opiates or PCP, but whatever.
Well,
what he does in his own time, right? It's his business, I guess.
Listen, I think this is something that we'll talk about more. I'm interested to see where a guy, who's that far advanced intellectually and academically, where he makes this work. And I should be able to, discern, between the addict just rationalizing and if he really actually makes a good point or has a good study to back something up. But I think on its face, yeah, you're right. It's incredibly irresponsible, especially because he was sort of like a pillar in the recovery community in a lot of ways, and he's doing a lot of work in legal and like helping people with legal issues in addiction and all of that. Like he was very involved, and it's just kind of like, I don't know, man. It's weird. And but I am going to give it a read.
Recreational heroin smoking when you get home from work.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we do not go for it.
And that's Recovery in the News.
Oh, Gavalt. This is a long week.
It's a long show.
Yeah. I like doing long shows, so.
Yeah. Well, this is the nice part of the week.
Yeah, this is it. This is my beer at the end of the day.
Somebody's calling me
in the morning.
New York City.
Is it important?
It's never important.
This week in Weird. Oh, I should probably turn to the article so I can read it. This Week in Weird comes from Coast to Coast AM, and it's Ghost Child Causes a Stir in Malaysia. A group of friends in Malaysia were convinced that they had encountered a ghost when they spotted a child riding a tricycle in the wee hours of the morning. But the spooky sight wound up having a less than supernatural explanation. The eerie incident reportedly occurred in the city of Penang last Wednesday at approximately 3 a.m. As the men were driving through the community, one of the passengers in the car was left bewildered when they passed a youngster that was inexplicably out and about at that late hour. Okay, those children. That doesn't tell the story.
But it said that it wound up having a less than supernatural explanation.
So what was
it?
I don't know. It's not on my page. I don't know. So that's at coasttocoastam.com if you want to hear the whole story.
Isn't Malaysia the same place that had that had that kid who was 2 years old who was smoking a couple of years ago?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Malaysia.
Strange country. The kids wander around. I don't know.
I was hoping to travel there someday. But so that's This Week in Weird. All right, guys, we've had a really great show. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter. Tweet us at TwatYouTwit, Instagram, Apple Podcasts, wherever great podcasts are sold. Please rate us. Review. We need reviews, guys.
More listeners. Tell your friends.
Everybody. And thank you to everybody who's been listening and writing to us and loving the show. And, this is so much fun for us. And thank you. Go to middleagesrecovery.com. Submit your story. And as we say here, non proficiat perfectum.
Progress, not perfection.
See you next week, guys.
Be good.